You know, we like to talk about money makers and bag fumblers. Washington offensive tackle Troy Fautanu made the most money during the NFL scouting combine. We're going to tell you about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout and a senior draft analyst. And thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydays. You know, I got to kick this introduction over to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. Here to bring you championship level content surrounding the NFL draft 24/7, 365. Man, I want to say shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Yes, this is another action-packed show. So if you haven't hit the like button, hit the like button. Go ahead and hit it now. If you haven't commented, make sure you comment after each segment and let us know how you feel about our biggest takes, man. And listen, if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is the best NFL draft content that there is out there. DP, we are talking offensive line. We are talking the trenches. We are talking about potentially the best position group that we've seen in the past 20 years, DP. And we're going to talk about the NFL Combine reactions. What do we see? What were some highs? What were some lows? And then we're going to give our biggest takeaway. But DP, before we get into that, man, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Keith, guys, money makers at the offensive line and offensive tackle position, and I said it in the intro, it is Troy Fautanu out of Washington, a guy that from coming into, I would say, Senior Bowl, right? He didn't show up. He wasn't there. He backed out of the Senior Bowl. But coming into that event, there was a lot of talk about him playing guard, right? And then that talk continued, especially when you think about coming into Indianapolis for the combine.
Yep.
And Keith, the movement skills, the arm length. I remember Jim. I tweeted, I was like, man, I just need to know the verified arm length. This was before the Senior Bowl on Troy. Because I was like, if his arms are well over 33s, I'm keeping him at tackle. I don't really understand the talk about putting him at guard. And Jim tweeted, he replied to my tweet, he said 34 and some change. I said, oh, Jim, if you hit that nail in the head, buddy, he's staying at tackle for me. And I believe he did measure in over 34s. And I think for me, Keith, we know that, like, I continue to talk about his athleticism. It's very evident, like, this is a good athlete. Quick feet, change of direction, measuring at 6'4", 317 pounds. He had 34.5-inch arms. He ran a 5.01 on the 40-yard dash. He jumped 32.5 at a 9.5 broad, right? And to kind of put it in perspective, I think we talked about Bucky Irvin yesterday. Bucky, who was 92 pounds, jumped like 9'9". You know what I mean? So it's like, just to kind of put that in perspective, but I think Troy absolutely helped himself to where teams, and I think I can't remember if it was Trevor Sikkema, Dan Brugler. I saw someone tweet, I was like, man, Troy, basically he's staying at tackle. And I'm happy to hear that people are now on that train, because I've been the conductor of it the whole season, that Troy Fautanu does not have to play guard just because he's an outstanding run blocker. I don't know why we do this to offensive tackles. If you're a great run blocker, you immediately can kick that. We got to kick you down in the guard. They tried to do the same thing to Fuaga before the Senior Bowl. Like, oh, Fuaga got to play guard. Neither one of these guys got to play guard. They can play tackle. Also, Fuaga, I think he solidified himself as a top 15 pick, in my opinion, Keith.
Yeah, I'm I agree with both of those sentiments, right? And talking about Troy Fautanu, I had just like did my real deep dive into him, right? So I heard a lot of the rumblings of, oh, should he play tackle, should he play guard? And we've had a couple conversations on here, but when I was able to watch him for myself, man, it was like you said, it was the athleticism, right? That was such an important factor in this. And when you watch him, and this is what I said, right? I'm gonna tweet this out. His losses, right? When he lost reps, it wasn't to me necessarily a direct correlation to a lack of size or strength or anything like that. I just thought it was technical things that he can refine. But I look at those teams that love to run screens, right? This is your guy. Like if you have those offensive, those offensive schemes where you want to run screens, you want to, get stuff to the running back, right? And you want your offensive lineman to get 20, 30, 40 yards down the field. He is that guy. And I think he has upside like any tackle in this class, right? It's just a matter of getting the details down. And like you talked about, the measurements came through, and I thought that was really well. But another guy, DP, that I thought solidified himself, because I think we were starting to hear, second round-ish, I'm not too sure on him, was Alabama's offensive tackle, J.C. Latham, right? And it was just a matter of just seeing that big boy move and say, oh, man, this is a mauler, right? And I said it once, and I'm going to say it again. He reminds me of La'el Collins, that just right tackle that's going to blow people off the football time and time again, and he's going to be that enforcer, right? And he's probably going to be a linchpin of somebody's run game. He's going to be like, you know what? Just move that guy off of the spot, right? And he's a traditional right tackle, in my opinion, right? So there are going to be certain teams that he's really going to fit. Like you think about the San Francisco 49ers, right? If he falls all the way down there, the 49ers, Shanahan is going to be more than happy to have a J.C. Latham, so that way they can tote the rock even more with the Deebo Samuel and the Christian McCaffrey and the rest of those guys. So that I agree with you, but that was my two guys that really popped off to me, and I think made themselves some money by solidifying some stuff and answering some questions.
Man, you know who else made themselves some money, Keith, in my opinion? Wisconsin. I love my big boys from Wisconsin, Keith. Tanner Bortolini, man. Tanner Bortolini came in there and he handled business, right? Measuring at 6'4". He was 303, 31 and a half on the arm, but he tested 4.94 in the 40, a 169 in the 10-yard split, 32 and a half in the vertical, 9.4 broad, 7.16 in the 3 cone. He put up 21 reps on the bench and 4.28 in the 20-yard short shuttle. I just love the way he moves, the way he plays. He gives you that I always talk about. He gives you that roster flexibility. Like he could play guard or he could play center, right? And it's just a guy that gives you that movement ability where, hey, if we're good at center, right? If you're a team that has a great center, but you need a guard, you can grab him. He could play guard for you. If you're a team with 2 legitimate guards and your tackles are good, but you need that guy that can snap the ball and handle those duties, Taylor can do that. He's athletic. He has good strength. He will pick guys off in the run game and get into the second level. Man, he's just a Wisconsin offensive lineman. And that, to quote our boy Ryan Fowler from the Draft Network, you just know what you're getting from these big boys from Wisconsin.
Yeah, no, 100%, and he's right on par, right, with what he's supposed to be. You brought up Bortolini as center. I'm gonna bring up my guy, and he's quickly becoming a pound the table guy, and he showed well because he did exactly what I thought he would do. And that's Bo Limmer, center from Arkansas, right? Yes, a guy that I watched the film, I really liked. I said, this guy has the goods. I'm telling you, he just feels like one of those players that goes in the fourth round. Yeah, nobody talks about, right? He just get drafted from Arkansas, and then next thing you know, he's a 6-time, 7-time Pro Bowl type player. I just see it, DP. I just have that feeling, and I usually don't even get that feeling about centers, right? We're talking about centers at the end of the day, but I really like what this guy can do as an interior offensive lineman. I think he threw up the most bench press reps, I think with 40 at the combine, so just showing that overall strength and what he can do, and it shows in the film. So I'm very excited about him too. So I thought there was some really good offensive linemen that made themselves some money. Some guys that were able to stabilize their draft stock, right, and kind of answer some questions. But it's always good to see these big 300-plus pound offensive linemen move around the field.
Keith, because he's listed at like 6'5", a little over 300 pounds and everything. Yeah, he put up like 39, almost 40 reps on the bench. Does he remind you any of Joe Tippmann from last year? Remember, Joe Tippmann was like 6'5", 6'6", big, strong, physical guy. Does he remind you any of him?
I see some of it. I think he has a little bit more grittiness grittiness to his game. I think when I watched Tippmann, and if you tell me if you disagree or not, I did think Tippmann was physical, but I thought Tippmann won because he was also like his athleticism outweighed, like the physicality part of his game. I think Limmer, like it's just the grizzly bear, and I know we said this when we was watching the combine. It just I don't know, and that's not even that's not a comp, right? That's not a player comp, but it just that's what I get from it, DP. It's just like a grizzly bear. This guy, he's gonna have the tape knuckles, is gonna be the blood on the knuckles, like the old NFL films, right? And I just believe he's gonna get after it. So just a really talented.
You got me hyped right now. I love to hear that. I love that type of stuff. As a former running back, I like my offensive lineman to be like that.
Well, listen, man, let's keep this thing going. DP, listen, we talk about the guys that made money, right? What we always say, what goes up must come down. So if some guys made money, that means some guys fell down the chart, right? And we're going to talk about some guys that potentially lost a little money, just being at the NFL Combine, and they didn't necessarily answer all the questions that they had to answer. Coming up next.
Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Let me repeat that. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Guys, you can bet on all your favorite NBA players like LeBron James, Anthony Edwards, all right, Karl Anthony Towns, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. If you like Draymond, you can bet on him too. But you can also bet on your favorite teams, the Miami Heat, my Detroit Pistons, the Boston Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and so much more with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So all you need to do is just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. What comes up must come down. And Keith, a guy that I gave a first-round grade to, and I'm not saying that he's going to fall to second or third round. I still think he's going to go first. Out of Georgia, Amarius Mims, Keith, and the guy that came in, I thought he was 6'6", 6'7". He's 6'8", 340, 36 and 1/8 on the arm. Like, he ran a 5.07 in the 40. He jumped 25, 9.3 broad, and a 1.78 in the 10-yard split. But I know people are thinking, well, Keith, DP, if he did all that, why is he a bag fumbler? I think if it's not so much the testing, guys, it's the concerns people have with injuries, right? This was his 2023 was his first year to be that first full year starter, right? He was supposed to have the Broderick Jones year of, I started down the back end of my sophomore year. Now my junior year, it's my year to ball out. And he played a couple games, and then I think the South Carolina game, he got hurt, lower body injury. He was in a cast around, or a boot and brace around his, I think it was his right ankle, right foot, and everything for a couple weeks. He came, about a month or two, he came back towards the end of the season. But so people have concerns about the injuries. Well, he ran a good 40 at 6'8", 340 the first time. 5.07 is a good number. That's fast. That's right on par with, I think, Joe Alt, and I think he ran faster than Olu. But then he went for that second run, and then that's where, it was the tweak of the hamstring. So now it's questions about his availability. What's the best ability, Keith? Availability. So I think not being able to finish the drills and finish the workouts hurt Amarius, because I know that, talking to people at the combine, like, if he's healthy, there's like, as a pass protector, he's one of the best in this class. You know what I mean? But you got to stay healthy, man, because that's all that matters at the end of the day.
No, I agree with that. I found it interesting, and I find it interesting, right? Well, some people skip over and say, hey, he'll never run a 40-yard dash, right? Or with some talent evaluators, like you said, kind of lean into, hey, this is second, third, fourth nagging type injury, right? To where something happened. And we talked about the split reps at Georgia, to where he's in the game for 10 plays and then out of the game for 8. If you attempted to watch Amarius Mims to do evaluation, you know exactly what we're talking about. It is the craziest thing, the way they sub him in and out of the game. It's confusing at times, and I would love to talk to somebody at Georgia just to get a better understanding of why they do it or did it, right? But I would say this: I agree from the perspective of, potential, say he fumbled the bag, right? But you're talking about raising a concern. And then sometimes the combine is about going through the entire combine and not raising a concern at the end of the day. And I thought about another offensive tackle prospect. And so I don't like doing negative, not I want to say negative comps, but comps of where there's a negative connotation around a guy.
Yeah.
But we have to in order to give the best evaluation and also to have the best discussion with our everydayers, right? And what I thought about, and I can easily see it because in the past, what we talked about Tavondre Sweat avoiding the Jordan Davis situation, right? And how that may not be looked at in the best light. For Amarius Mims, you're trying to avoid the Mehki Becton situation. And just you don't want guys to sit there and say, hey, this guy has all the talent, because I think it's very similar, DP, because I remember Mehki Becton coming out of nowhere, right? And being 6'6", 6'7", right? Being athletic, running a fast 40, right? And everybody's like, hey, we have to get our guys on, I have to get our hands on him. He's going to have some developmental things, but we can work with it because he has all the physical tools. And then the New York Jets has just been flat out injuries, right? Injuries and inconsistencies. And when you draft a guy, DP, with all the tools and the skill sets, right? If he's not playing and getting better, then he's still the same guy that's somewhat raw, right? So you're 2-3 years into trying to develop a guy to get him finally to the point to where you thought he was going to be. But then, man, that's 2-3 years past. Right now, you're into talking about, should we do the 5th-year option just that quick, right, on a guy that you thought had so much upside. So more than just saying comparing him to Mehki Becton, you just think about NFL personnel, right? And you talk about recent comps and things like that. When I think about the injury situation, that is definitely something you want to be, you want to check the box with the medicals, and you could make you apprehensive if you're an NFL team. And can I throw in this point too, real quick, DP, is that there's just so many offensive tackles. Like, and we wonder, right? And we talked about this in my mock draft that somebody may fall, right? Unless all of these teams are going to go after 10 offensive tackles or 10 offensive linemen in the first 25 picks, somebody's going to fall at the end of the day. And so I think it's going to make for a very interesting conversation.
No, 100%. Like you said, Keith, if he and then we think about like those soft tissue injuries, like those things are like they give you pause for concern, because it's like, man, you could shake back from that, or it could linger for multiple years.
Yeah, and they usually compound, DP. Like I even think about a guy. Remember Tavon Austin? And it was like one hamstring pull, and then there was another, right? And then next thing you know, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's a knee, it's an ankle, right? I agree. Just those soft body injuries, sometimes they compound and then they turn much bigger. And then also you're talking about these big athletes, right? They're carrying around 330 pounds on their frame. Now, mind you, Amarius Mims is not built like everybody else because he's probably low body fat percentage, right, at 330, but it's still carrying around 330 pounds.
I think I would say Amarius Mims, Joe Alt, and Olu are probably the most fit tackles I've seen in quite some time. Like, you know what I mean? Like I
would throw Tyler in there too. I would throw Tyler Guyton.
I forgot about Tyler Guyton. Yep, you're right, 100%. Same thing. Patrick Paul looked, pretty fit for a big body guy as well. But Keith, I'll say there's one other guy I felt like, and I said, I think you might remember when I said this, he's boring for a good reason. His game, right? He's not flashy, but I think the way he tested is going to drop him down from day 2 to day 3. And that's Joe Alt's teammate, Blake Fisher. Blake Fisher did not test well at all. Like 182 in the 10-yard split. Like he was like 32nd percentile and everything with the offensive tackles. Like his 3-cone, his short shuttle was around 52 percentile. He only jumped 28 inch in the vertical. He was 94th percentile in the his broad jump was good. Showed the explosiveness of the 9'6", but just the way that he, like, not that his numbers were bad because he's an offensive tackle, but when you have so much talent at the offensive tackle position like this class has, I think that's going to knock him down to potentially to the top of the 4th, because there's going to be so many. Somebody's going to take a flyer on athletic, big body, long arm Patrick Paul. I just talked about. Somebody's going to take a flyer on him, even though I would say that Blake Fisher is a more refined prospect. Somebody's going to take a shot on the upside of a Patrick Paul. Say, man, he tested. He looks like as an athlete. He's explosive. I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl. I said, man, this dude got some juice. out of the blocks, right? You know what I'm talking about? Getting in this vertical set, getting off the ball. It's quick, it's sudden, it's twitchy, but it's the technical hand stuff with him and anchoring where you have to worry about, excuse me, where I don't feel that same way about Blake. But Blake isn't the athlete that he is. So somebody, as you always talk about, there's, you're like, man, listen, give me a good football player, right? Like that's the way you look at it. He's like, but there's a lot of people who want the upside, who want the athletic traits. And I think that's why Blake Fisher probably, I ain't gonna say he fumbled the bag, right? But just because of the situation he's in a loaded tackle group, he might get pushed down.
And it's very possible, right? And it depends on how people view the offensive tackle position, development, things like that. But DP, that's exactly where I want to go with our next segment, right? Like, how do we put this into, I guess, into a box, right? The combine testing for a guy that's 330 pounds that would never run 40 yards. But it matters because we all fought with these offensive tackles, right? That, hey, this guy ran a 4.8 at 330. He's a heck of an athlete. But I also want to look at some of draft history, right? And how these quote unquote high level athletes potentially perform in the NFL. So should it matter even less if you're an offensive lineman, right? How you perform in some of these athletic testing. So coming up next, man, we're going to have that really good conversation. Biggest takeaway from the NFL Combine coming up next.
Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your number one ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your number one ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Keep your number one ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Keith, you kind of alluded to your biggest takeaway from the 2024 NFL scouting combine for the offensive tackle class is?
What my biggest takeaway is, I have a question, right? And my question is, and I really like doing these, I guess, strategy and concept type conversations surrounding the NFL draft, right? And we talked about the combine, right? Like that, we even our pre-combine shows, we talked about how much stock we put in it, right? It's majority film. You put in some of the combine testing because it matters, right? But for offensive linemen, should it matter even less? And my reason is that I look at some of these offensive linemen that were taken in the first round, right? Because they were really good athletes, but they didn't necessarily pan out. And it's like, do you just take the guy that just simply gets the job done on film, or do you take the guy with the high upside? Because like you said, the Patrick Paul versus the Blake Fisher, right? That conversation, if you just purely take that example, Blake Fisher appears to be NFL ready. Patrick Paul appears to need some development, needs a weight room, right? But he has the better measurements and is probably the more explosive athlete, right? And in other positions, you probably go with that guy, right? That's the more explosive athlete that you can quickly develop. But I don't think it necessarily pans out like that in the NFL when it comes to these guys being able to step in and go. So my question would the athletic testing matter even less for you, or are you a guy that leans on some of the athletic testing because it will show, because it is high level athletes going at each other?
I mean, some testing, right? The 40-yard dash, man, nope. The 10-yard split, yeah, I want to see how explosive you are off the ball in that short range, that short, quick area burst. Like, I think they showed on the broadcast during the actual combine, like how Trent Williams' 10-yard split helped him in the league. And you see him fire off, get up to the second level, and just pancake a tackle, right? But Keith, I agree with you. Like, it's not the explosive testing. It's you want it because it helps with the picture, it helps with the projection, but it's not always necessary, right? Because you think about, I'm gonna throw some names at you real quick, Keith. I will see, what I'm saying, some tackle names that ran fast at the combine over the past. Avante Collins, 2017 from TCU. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know where he is right now. Bruce Campbell out of Maryland, right? He ran like a 4.85. I remember this dude looked like a tackle built in the lab, right? But it didn't translate to his play.
It was.
You know what I mean? It's a couple. Keith, there's a couple. Trevor Penning, a guy that I remember you were a little bit out on compared to the consensus. Like, yeah, I don't know about this one guy. I remember you talking to us about it, right? You think about Desmond Harrison from West Georgia back in 2018, Lyndon Murtha, 2009, offensive tackle from Nebraska, ran a 4.89. Everybody that there's some names that did pan out, but there's a lot of names on that list, Keith, that I was looking at, and I was like, man, those dudes didn't live up to what the athletic testing showed at all. But
yeah, and it's for it, right? But that's why I wanted to have the conversation, right? Is because we're looking at these big boys moving, and sometimes that's why I was asking, like, should the percentage of the athletic testing matter even less, right? Because you just how you looked at some fast guys that where they tested well at the combine didn't pan out. I'm pretty sure there's a whole lot of offensive linemen, if you look at it, right? Some guys that tested very average, but they were good NFL offensive linemen, right? Just very average players. So I look at it, and my biggest takeaway from the evaluation perspective is that, hey, maybe the athletic testing matters even less for offensive linemen, and you shift that percentage to even more film and going with your gut, because I just think there's so much more that goes into it, right? Like just core strength and like how you handle other 300-pound. There's no athletic testing for how you handle somebody converting speed to power on you, right? Like there's no testing for that, and we all know they're going to be put in that position, right? Or how you climb to the second level, right, under control and things like that. So that's the thing. But I want to transition real quick. The biggest takeaway from this draft class is DB. These guys came in and they checked a lot of boxes, man. They checked a lot of boxes. I feel really good about saying this is probably the best offensive lineman class that we've probably seen in 15 years. And I've said it, and I've said it again. If your team needs offensive linemen and they leave out of the 2024 NFL draft without offensive linemen, your general manager, your head coach, the owner did not do their job. They should be able to walk away with 2 to 3 starters.
No, Keith, 100%. That pairs into my takeaway. My takeaway was like, this is arguably the best tackle class. This is the best tackle class that I've evaluated, right? I think you can go back to the Penei Sewell class where it was like him and a couple other guys, and that was a really good class.
Alex Leatherwood, Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins, Liam Eichenberg, Walker Little, Jackson Carman, Samuel Roseman.
Like as prospects, there was some good dudes in that group, right? Everybody didn't pan out to be good pros, but as prospects, they were good. This class at tackle alone, like you said, the offensive line in general is loaded. Center, guard, tackles going to center or guard, like a Graham Barton. You can find guys that can fit any position you need on your offensive line. But when I look at this tackle group, right, everybody wants to pay the tackles, the guys that protect the quarterbacks, guys that keep the Von Millers, the Myles Garretts, the TJ Watts under wraps as much as possible. This is a class I think you can get yourself a quality starter in rounds 5 and 6. This class is freaking loaded. And if, like you said, if your team needs tackle, or offensive line period, but especially if you need tackle help, New York Jets, there's so many, the Washington Commanders, there's so many teams that can use tackle help. If you walk out of the 2024 NFL draft with no tackles, right, with all this talent on the board, listen, you're not going to be there long, brother. You're not going to be there long, right? You're going to hit it with that Magic Johnson. I ain't going to be here. Like, that's just what it's going to be. Next year, you're not going to be there, big fella, because it's too much talent. It's too much depth to ignore and to just say, you know what, don't keep kicking the can down the road. You went round 1, a tackle staring you dead in the face and say, you know what, let me get that receiver. Let me get that other position that we really need. And then say, well, I'll get it next round. It's not always a guarantee. You know what I'm saying? Because there's always a run at certain points of the draft where teams, a lot of times, it's like fantasy football. I've been in fantasy football drafts where you sit there like, you know what, I'm going to wait on a quarterback. And then somebody takes a quarterback and like, see, like this is where the problem begins. The next person takes a quarterback, like, okay, I can't be going into round 6 without a QB. You don't want to be in a position where a run on tackles happens, because I think it could be 1 or 2 runs in the first 3 rounds, and you're sitting there around 4 like, all right, I don't know I don't know if I want any of these guys as starters for my team. And if you in that situation, you failed.
Yep, I agree 100% with DP. That wraps up another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, man. Well, I want to say shout out to our everydayers, man. I told you at the top of the show, man, hit the like button, hit the like button, hit the like button. If you haven't commented, go ahead and comment, man. Who were your biggest combine performers from the offensive tackle class, the interior offensive line class? Also, man, want to include those guys. And listen, let's talk about the biggest take. How do you guys grade the offensive lineman, right? How do you look at it like that? How much are you taking into account the athletic testing? And then listen, if you're not subscribe to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And tell a friend to go ahead and subscribe to the best NFL draft content there is out there. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. My co-host, man, my guy, Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And we always like to say, man, y'all talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Guys, listen, we have more draft content coming up on tomorrow's show. All right, we will get into some stock up, stock down. We're gonna maybe look at some prospect spotlight. Okay, we will get into it. We have, you know what, Keith? We haven't talked. Like, we haven't really put the spotlight on Caleb Williams. Maybe we put the spotlight on Caleb Williams on tomorrow's show to kick it off.
And we still have to have a Brock Bowers conversation too. DP.
Oh yeah, we still got to have the Brock. We got time. We got time, baby. So we got time. But listen, guys, come and join the conversation again tomorrow on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.